Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is JJ, and I'm a writer. I'm also a reader and a generalized nerd, so if you like that kind of stuff, hang out, have fun, enjoy the rest of my channel. I wanted to answer one of the most commonly asked questions writers in general get, which is where do you get your ideas and how do you find them? For a lot of people, I think ideas come from day-to-day life. I know for me, in particular, a lot of my ideas come from my normal circumstances. A lot of my other ideas come from following the thought processes of what would happen if fill in the blank. Others of my ideas come from just interactions that I have with people. So, for example, let's look at the short stories that exist on my blog, right? So looking at my short stories and where these ideas came from, just in general, from all of the short stories that are on my blog. If you wanted to go read some of them, you can find them at authorjjhanna.com/blog. It's pretty simple. Let's see. Let's go back to the one that I posted in April of 2020. That one was A Night in the Snow. You can hear it by going right there. I'll read it to you just for funsies, because why not? This one is one of my suspense short stories, and at the time, I was working at a coffee shop. It was winter when I was writing it. I write them about 3 or 4 months prior to when they actually appear on my blog. So I was writing that one mid-January or February. So I was sitting in a pretty empty coffee shop in the snowstorm, watching the snow come in, and as my brain works, instantly, maybe we can call it the fear paths that have been created simply by me being a female in my young adulthood, growing up in America. But the fear paths that follow through my head follow the same thought process of, what if there was someone dangerous out in that parking lot? And then taking it a step further, what if I was a target? What if I wasn't just a random passerby, but what if I had been specifically targeted? What would they have to do to research me, to target me? What would that look like? So A Night in the Snow is a story about a young retail worker who is targeted and kidnapped by a career kidnapper. That's literally what he does. The main antagonist of the story. Protagonist? Antagonist, anti-hero, whatever you want to call him. He's the main character that you read from the perspective of. So I was going through that thought process of what would it look like, what would happen if I was in danger while I was sitting here finishing up work. And instead of just thinking the thoughts, I figured I may as well follow through and write them down and just play in that playground for a little bit. Moving forward, we have the Pembroke Academy for Gifted Children. This is another one of my crime suspense short stories. I'm a crime suspense writer, so most of my stories are going to fall into that category, but my short stories span a few different genres. So this one is crime suspense. And that one I was thinking, really, I had some characters that I wanted to explore their backstory for, and so I wrote this story with different names. Actually, initially, they had different names. And then after I finished writing it, I changed the name so I could publish it this way. And I'll let you know if I ever get the books published who these characters were originally, because I think that'd be kind of cool. But essentially, I was just exploring. I was exploring in the world that I created for my novel, figuring out, okay, what are some ways that you could maybe recruit people into a criminal lifestyle? If you were a criminal, how do you find and target? Who do you target? And then how do you bring them into the entire scenario? What does that look like? Different spy shows, like I'm recently rewatching Chuck with my mom, and we just watched an episode where they were going over how do you develop an asset, and then how do you control them, and then eventually how do you burn them? So same concept, but how would a criminal do it? Would they do it the same way? Would they do it a different way? What tactics do they have? What process goes into that? What's the long-term repercussion of any of that? Are there? So on and so forth. An unlikely friend That one I actually tell the story of where my inspiration came from that one on my blog post, so you'll have to go check that one out. Let's see. Live Another Day. Okay, Live Another Day posted in July. That one I wrote in March of 2020. And for all of you who know what happened in March of 2020, it felt like the apocalypse, right? So I decided to take it to the nth degree, as you do when I was writing. I was feeling all of the fear and the emotions of lockdowns and economic distress, and what do I do if I don't have a job, and what do I do if I can't go to my job for an extended period of time? How long will they keep us on retainer? So on and so forth. So I wrote Live Another Day, which is a zombie apocalypse story loosely based on the beginning aspects of the COVID 2020 pandemic. So when things locked down, how long can you go without having factories reopen? What would happen if you didn't reopen the economy? What would happen if you did? What would happen if, for example, this disease had long-term effects that you didn't anticipate, so on and so forth. I allowed myself to go down that path, and then I wrote it down in an entertaining way, hopefully for you all. So that one actually falls more into a horror short story, horror survivalist, zombie apocalypse story. I don't tend to go that direction, but it fit for that particular story. So there's that one. There's Live Another Day. The Dream Sharer. I wrote this one back in college when I was trying to write things that I thought could maybe be published in literary journals and stuff like that. And this one, The Dream Sharer, I had the idea essentially of, I had the image in my mind of this creature that I write about. I don't know where I got the idea from. I think I was just taking all of the creepy creatures that I knew of and just going from there. But, so The Dream Sharer, that one I was just sitting down in the library at school, and I thought, you know what I want to do? I want to write a short story, and I think it would be really interesting to play with dialects to an extent. So how do you show different sounds in writing, different creatures, how they talk? Is it annoying to read it this way? Is it not? So that one I was exploring different writing techniques while also exploring a new genre. That one's horror spec-fic. If a Tree Falls, that's another crime suspense story. That one's about a hacker. You can listen to it there. Or you can go to my blog and actually read them, share them, so on and so forth. I'll put the link for my blog down below. Crowsdecoration. That one is a fun one because that one I had the desire to write and I had no idea what I wanted to write. I was in a class at the time. I think we were writing commercial fiction, maybe. I think that was the class. But I got out of class and I was like, I need to write something. I want to write something right now and I want it to be really good. And so I went to the library and I grabbed the whiteboard dry erase marker that was just sitting on the little shelf thing in one of the study rooms, and I picked it up and I was like, okay, I'm going to write a story about whatever word I write on the board first. And so I started writing letters, and I ended up writing magic. So that's the story that came from me writing magic on a whiteboard after class one day. The Crowsdecoration. It ended up being a story about war and mages and what would happen if mages were real and magic was real, and how would people respond to them if they were the ones in charge, and what if they weren't, and so on and so forth. You can go read it, or you can let me read it to you. There's a playlist down below, and also there's the link to my blog where all of these are available. Green Mountain. That one I didn't post here. You'll have to actually go read that one on my blog. Green Mountain is a chat fiction story where the entire story, it's a criminal crime suspense story, but the entire story is told through text messages, which is why I didn't read it here on my YouTube channel, because I don't know how to read that in a way that is effective. So I didn't. I just skipped that month. But Green Mountain is a murder mystery told through text messages, as if you were a detective finding these text transcripts, going through them. So there's a lot of different elements that I had to figure out how to tell a story that way. There's intentional misspellings. There's intentional text talk. There's different tones and how you read them. And I bet if I did my job right, you can read that and you can know exactly when something's shifted. So if you want to accept the challenge, go read that story, again, link down below, read Green Mountain, and then come back here and comment where you think the criminal took the phone. But that one, I was just trying to write chat fiction. I wanted to know if it was possible to write a murder mystery-ish story just through text. Anyway, and then Pembroke Siren. Again, I'm exploring the Pembroke universe. It started with the Pembroke Academy for Gifted Children. That was an exploration of the world that I had created for my novels. It's now evolved into something new, which I think is kind of cool. Someday I'll probably write a novel in the Pembroke universe, following the original person who created the Pembroke Society. I think that should be the standalone novel that I write in 2021. Thank you for helping me solve my problems. I'll let you know if I end up doing that. I think I will, though, because that sounds like a good idea. Is Pembroke himself, right? So but the Pembroke Siren, again, is a story about how do you get people into a criminal lifestyle? What do you have to do to pull those strings? What do you do? What if you do it later in life? What if you do it early in life? Exploring the world. This is where my ideas come from, though, that's drawn from my experience on a college campus. That's drawn from my life experience needing scholarships to go to that college campus. My jobs in coffee shops, my jobs in various different scenarios. So all of the stories that I write are fiction. The characters that I create are fiction, but they all start somewhere, right? I think we all know for a fact that nothing ever exists in a void. I cannot create a story completely from nothing. It always has some sort of external inspiration. Even fantasy novels are based somewhat in what we know and understand. Otherwise, you can't tell a story that readers will understand. So in terms of where ideas come from, that's sort of where my ideas came from for the stories that I have shown you in all the way throughout 2020. Also, if you are interested, I created a story tour t-shirt where you can get all of these titles and my logo on a t-shirt. I'll put it here. It's available in my merch shop down below. But if you've enjoyed the stories and you wanted to have that little memento, it will only be available throughout 2021. And then eventually in December of 2021, there will be a 2021 story tour t-shirt, and the 2021 will go away. That was a lot of dates. Hopefully that made sense to you. Also, I'm starting to create individual merch for the short stories themselves. Right now, you can still get A Night in the Snow on scarves, blankets, t-shirts, bags, pillows, but that won't stick around for a whole lot longer. So if you want it, you'll have to go order it now. It will probably come back in the future, but it won't be around all the time like the rest of my merch is. All that to say, this is where my ideas come from. When I'm writing, I have to come up with ideas. 95% of the time, I'm thinking in the background of, okay, what am I going to write about this month? And what am I going to write this time? And so on and so forth. And the real trick is noticing and keeping track of the ideas so that you don't forget them when you actually have a chance to sit down and write. But as a writer, my mind is always working on different scenarios of, okay, what would happen if this happened? Or what would I do if this happened? Or what would happen if I did this? Or what would happen if this happened to me? How would I respond? How would somebody else respond? Like, how would this character of mine respond? How is that different than what I would do? Is it different than what I would do? And I just follow those paths until I find a character and a world and then something going on in that world that's worth telling the story of, right? So with A Crow's Decoration, for example, that one, there was a war going on and the character was fighting in the war, and that was intrigue enough for me to sit down and write about it. The Pembroke stories, those ones there are individual recruiters essentially going around who decide in a lot of ways the fate of these people that don't know what's happening to them until it's too late. And that's an interesting thing to try to tell. How do you tell that sort of espionage-esque story? That or Green Mountain, right? I had these teenagers and young adults texting each other, and I was like, okay, well, why is this interesting? But then I was like, oh, let's take a scenario that every young woman is familiar with, and then take it to the extreme. Let's follow it all the way through. That's where most of my ideas come from, I think, is the question of what would you do if you had to follow something all the way through? How does that affect the scenario? And that's for my short stories. For my novels, obviously, again, a lot of it is the same. It's who is the main character and what the heck is going on that makes this story worth telling. So that's where I get ideas for the things that I write. If I had to narrow it down. Obviously, again, I'm drawing from all sorts of my own past experiences. I'm drawing from the books that I'm reading. I draw from the games that I play, from the TV shows that I watch, from the other media that I consume. But yeah, so I hope that helps answer that question, at least in terms of where do ideas come from and what helps you know which ones are worth writing about and which ones aren't. Until next time, I'll see you then. If you have other questions like this that you want me to answer, put them down below and I will get to them. And until then, see ya.